Press. Open the gates.
Hello, hello. We got people joining us, connecting to their audios. Hopefully, oh, hi, Shelby. I see Shelby. I know Shelby.
Sorry, some of you have my name when you join. We think it's a Zoom snag, so you might have to rename yourself so we don't all have we don't all exist all together.
Haunting.
We'll just all be named Jenna.
Yeah,
it's fine.
I have said I'd like to clone myself and do more jobs before in the past, so
Happening.
it's happening.
All right, we're gonna give a couple minutes just in case people are still joining. We had some people last minute registering, and we had a decent crew pre-register. So we'll give just a minute or two as people are logging in as Jenna, named Jenna.
Yeah.
As all the Jennas crowd
like a Twilight Zone episode.
Puffing out my puffs.
I love the puff sleeves.
Yeah, before we get started, maybe I could talk a little bit about power dressing when you speak publicly. I'm a big believer in it.
Yep. The in-person power suit is not, applicable anymore. So now it's the Zoom power puff sleeves.
Right. Yep. And I've shared this with both of you, but this was just coincidence, but this is perfect because it's Zoom. You can see it on the Zoom. Shoulders up.
It's a power puff girl.
Power puff. It's a power puff. I also shared this with Jenna and Danielle, but they started snow blowing outside my window about 5 minutes ago. So please tell me if it becomes a thing and I can work around it.
Right on cue.
It truly.
Right.
I mean, what would it be if not a last minute?
So, I know it's like 3 after. I know Lindsay's got a lot of great stuff to get through. So I'm going to start with some welcomes. So welcome everybody who's here already. We might still have people joining us, and they're just going to miss out on the puff sleeves, unfortunately. So sad for them. If you're not already familiar with Pixo, I just wanted to say we are a software consultancy in Champaign-Urbana, and we create custom websites, software, and applications that address unique challenges. I'm Danielle, and I am the account executive, and I'm really happy and honored today to be helping facilitate this chat. We get a lot of questions with content strategy, and just really excited to share some more of Pixo's expertise with you all today. I'm going to have our team members share and say hello that are part of this today. But we also want to hear from you and know what your expertise is, so we know we're speaking the right language and answering questions that apply to what you do. So I believe we have a slide.
Yeah, we do. So I'm going to put a link to AHA Slides in the chat. I'm Jenna, by the way. I'm the account coordinator here at Pixo. So I'll be handling details, putting helpful things into the chat. I'll also be sharing some follow-up materials after our time together today, including a recording of the Zoom. You probably got that lovely robot lady's voice notifying you that things are being recorded as you enter the room today. If you have questions throughout the presentation today, please share those in the chat. We have a lot of folks joining us today, so we probably won't be able to get to questions live as Lindsay's presenting, but I will keep an eye out for questions in the chat and make sure they get answered at the end. If you would rather ask your question directly, you can just hang on to that, make a note of it, and we'll address it at the Q&A at the end of the presentation. So another small housekeeping note that we just found out today, as you're entering the Zoom room, if you didn't pre-register, you enter with my name in a Twilight Zone occurrence. So feel free to change your name to your actual name if you haven't pre-registered. So welcome, welcome. And I'll put an AHA slide in the chat and we'll get to know a little bit about you.
And if you do have questions about AHA Slides and the link, if you haven't used that before, feel free to throw those in the chat as well. We just want to make sure we know exactly kind of what you guys are looking for with what you do in your roles with content. Last but not least, I'm going to turn this over to the main part of our event to Lindsay Markle, Pixo Senior Content Strategist. I'll have her introduce herself and get started on our topic today.
Hello. I want to thank you all so much for coming, getting my slides in order. It's great. I see some familiar names in the room. I mean, other than Jenna Fry 10 times, which is very familiar. And it's great to see everyone. Thank you for being here. This is one of my favorite things to do. And I'm going to get my slides going. All right. So my name is Lindsay Markle. I want to thank so much to Jenna and Danielle, the one and only Jenna Fry, the actual Jenna Fry. I said this earlier to the entire Pixo staff, but they've made this very easy for me. And like I said, this is one of my favorite things to do. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Jenna and Danielle. And let's get going. So my name is Lindsay Markle. I am the senior content strategist at Pixo. I get to brag a little bit because I was Pixo's first content strategist. I've been here for about 7 years, really grown up in content strategy here. And content strategy, in case it's a topic that's new to you, totally fine. Content strategy is really just about getting the right information to the right people at the right time on your website or your product, which sounds pretty straightforward, and it is, but there's a lot that goes into that, right? There's a lot of knowledge that you have to be able to do that really well. But in general, the truth of content strategy is really basic. It really comes down to priority and these basics, and that's what this webinar is all about. So I work with people every day as a content strategy consultant, people who are building, reworking websites, worried about their websites, trying to create content, plan content. And I see them, and the content strategy team sees them spinning their wheels all the time. And we hear a lot of the same things that we just wish we could very gently and lovingly shake people and say, you don't need to worry about that as much. You're worrying about the wrong things. And so my colleague Lindsay Groth and I wrote this talk last year, basically on the prompt of what if we could really sit everyone down and say, please don't worry about these things anymore. You can worry about better things. Put your energy elsewhere. So, and that's what we'll be talking about today. And we spin our wheels from time to time too. So none of us are perfect. All right. Who can use this talk? I want to be zoomed in. Do these slides look normal? I hope so.
Actually, and I'm just going to interrupt before she gets into like her slides, but and I promise I will not do this very often during her presentation, but we do hear a lot of things that come up with questions. We put this together, and it's a short 1 hour webinar. We're not going to be able to get to everything content strategy. And it's just not possible in the 1 hour. So what we are going to offer is options to set up some times with Lindsay and myself after this. If you're joining today and have more questions, you want to dig into any of the myths she's busting today and say, hey, tell me more about that. Or if you have a question that comes up about your own site and content strategy, you're like, you didn't really cover this, but I have this really quick question. Doesn't have to be necessarily quick. So there's going to be a Calendly link to book an appointment with us. If you do want to extend this, we will have some time at the end to answer some Q&A, but sometimes that's not comfortable for everybody in a big group. So we're just going to offer this as well to touch base with us after. So just throwing that out there. Back to you, Lindsay.
Yeah. Thank you, Danielle. No, please interrupt as much as you want. And yeah, a lot of the problems that we see in content strategy are very similar. The similar problems come up all the time, and the circumstances are always different. So yes, we would love to talk to you more about your circumstances if you find this intriguing or helpful. So who can use this? Hopefully you, if you manage or create content for a site or for any kind of product. Most of my work is in websites, but it's applicable to almost anything. Also, if you feel pressured by general common content myths, like we'll be talking about today, you might have stakeholders in your ear. We know that's really common when you're working on sites, at work, or even just an inner voice that has sort of absorbed some of these misconceptions about what's important on the web, some outdated beliefs perhaps, or maybe you just need permission to get back to basics. Like I said, we all spin our wheels from time to time. Maybe you've been doing this for a while, and you might have heard everything that we'll talk about today, but this might be a good time for you to check in and say to yourself, okay, I'm doing a good job. I'm doing well. You can just keep it between the ditches, as we like to say, and probably shouldn't say in the country. So good content strategy practices can be implemented at any point, anytime. It's so scalable, and that's why I think it's so great. So we as content strategists and also just as people working in the technology space these days know a lot about how people use the web. Usability studies abound. We don't need to reinvent the wheel on this. And we know that people primarily scan web content, right? They don't read websites like you would read a novel, reading every word, trying to absorb the atmosphere. No, they're looking for information for a very specific decision probably that they're trying to make. You can see this eye tracking study on the left here from Nielsen Norman Group. This is showing how people's eyes scan across a web page, looking for keywords or phrases, depending on what kind of information they're interested in. People use all sorts of devices to access the web, your websites. They have all sorts of varying abilities and circumstances, and they come to your website with a purpose. I say this all the time, despite never having seen Field of Dreams. A website is not Field of Dreams. So I hear it is not, if you build it, they will come. They will not come unless they are really interested in your topic. So they come to your site with a purpose. They have questions that they're trying to answer and goals they're trying to accomplish. We also know a lot about how people manage websites from working with our clients and from being content authors ourselves. So if these common scenarios apply to you, you are certainly not alone. We know that web content is usually no one's full-time job. It's almost always, in the circumstances we see people, it's on top of their already full-time job that they have. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen for organizational websites. A lot of times, a lot of competing goals to negotiate, and everyone's personal goal is, of course, the most important one. Writing is hard. That's not pejorative. It really is hard. And it can be hard for everyone, even those who identify as writers like myself. It's a struggle. And your content management system may be old, restrictive, hard to update. It might be in desperate need of an overhaul. But a redesign can seem really big and scary and expensive and time consuming, and it can be. So kudos to you if this is not your situation. Relax, take a deep breath. But if this sounds familiar, there is hope for you. First of all, and most fun, you can just take the pressure off of yourself by ditching some long-held beliefs about the web. Things like this, like I said, that we keep hearing over and over again, and they just keep people spinning. And we would like you to just ditch these beliefs if possible. Maybe easier said than done, but you can start your journey today. So maybe you've heard some of these. I'm just going to fly through these myths and then we'll talk about them individually. We've got to keep the homepage fresh. And it is always that word, fresh. If it's important, it should live above the fold. Is this too many clicks? We need to post a lot of news. And of course, we have a lot of great news that someone is going to write. We should embed our social media feeds into our website. Our public website is also our intranet. Double duty, so efficient. Nope. And we just need to invest in a cool video. Video will solve our problems. Does any of this sound familiar to you all? It sounds very familiar to me. And if it doesn't sound familiar to you, I guess kudos again, but you're about to learn a lot about myths on the web. So let's dig in. Keeping the homepage fresh is definitely, I would say, the #1 thing that we hear from stakeholders that I want to lovingly shake out of them. So it's true that the benefit of the web is that it is alive. It's ever changing. It is fresh. It's not static. And updating content is great. We love it. But when people say we've got to keep the homepage fresh, I have never in my life or my career heard a user of a website say this. I love this website, but I just wish it was a little fresher. I wish the homepage was fresher, because the people we hear it from are clients, website managers, the people who are managing and updating the website, and the people who are logging into the website and looking at it day after day, making updates, or internal people who say, oh, I love our company's website. I set it as my homepage in my browser, and I just keep seeing this same hero image day in and day out. It's so boring. It's not fresh. But the great news of content strategy is your content is not for you. This is our mantra. I've shown it before with flames on the slides. Your content is not for you. You do not create a website for yourself. I mean, maybe you do. And if so, that sounds like a great performance art project that I'd like to hear about. But in general, if you're making a website, you're hoping that other people will look at it. So who is it for? It's for the people you're trying to reach, your target audiences. And most users are new to your website. So if you have site analytics, Google Analytics is free, at least to a certain extent. So I would highly recommend, if you have a personal website, you have access to this, add Google Analytics. And your site analytics will give you some pretty clear data that the majority of your site visitors aren't frequent flyers. They're new. So this is definitely true for organizational sites like higher ed sites. We see admission cycles, things like that. So the pressure is off of you to try and make your homepage feel different all of the time with a new photo or a primary message more than a couple times a year, or when it makes sense for your campaigns and initiatives. So what happens then, what we see is when a homepage starts to feel tired to folks, or when someone insists that, you know, more initiatives get top billing, we always hear, we can't just choose one picture, we can't just choose one headline, we have so many things going on. The solution is often this: a rotating banner or a carousel or a slideshow. It has many names, but this is generally what it looks like. There's an image, usually text, something you can, a link you can click on, and some arrows where you can page through. So this feels great to a lot of people. A lot of clients ask for this. It's fresh. Look at all the freshness. It moves sometimes. Don't we love it? But many usability studies tell us that a slideshow is not a silver bullet. Number one, if they auto rotate, which we essentially don't allow because of this, they're really annoying to people. This can be especially true for people with motor skill limitations, who have low literacy, or who speak English as a second language. Also, it's just annoying for anyone to not be in control of the web content that they're looking at. So you miss a slide, you miss an image because it skips past one, you know, and you think, wait, what was I didn't even get a chance to see that. And clicking back to see what you missed might be a challenge. It's annoying, it's frustrating to people. And they're skipped. People don't use them. It makes us feel better as web content managers, perhaps, but people do not use them. Even if users can click through to next slides, they don't do it. So a study like the graph you see on the bottom here of 4 nonprofit websites shows that the slider click-through rate absolutely tanks the more slides there are, to under 1% by this, you know, 6th or 7th slide there. And the first slide is, of course, the most clicked. So it's, you know, it's sort of a cold comfort. Yeah, we can put a lot of pictures up there. People won't see them. So let's reframe. We've got to keep the homepage fresh too. You've just got to keep the homepage current and accurate. Most people don't come to your website for like their daily entertainment, I would imagine. So just keep the message clear, keep it accurate, and move freshness way down on the priority list. Next belief to ditch: if it's important, it should live above the fold. If you don't know what the fold is, what a beautiful life you must live. So we all remember newspapers. I'm sure some of us still read newspapers. I've held a newspaper in my hand, and the concept of the fold makes sense for a newspaper, and that's where it came from. You put the biggest headline above the literal fold of the paper because it's the only thing that people will see when papers are stacked on a newsstand, and we want them to see it. We want them to buy it. So it's common for people to see a website, and you know, the fold has been, of course, a term in websites and digital design forever. And so this comes up a lot, and it's common for people to consider the fold to be whatever they see on their browser, on their device that they're using at the moment. But the fold doesn't really exist on the web. It's not a newsstand. We are all on different devices, different internet connections, and the cutoff depends on how big a screen is. It depends on if you have your browser zoomed in. It depends on how fast a content can load on a page. So there is absolutely no single universal fold. The fold does not exist. The fold is a myth itself. Still, a lot of people still fear putting content below the fold because it requires scrolling. And this is very scary to some people. This is another thing we hear all the time. I literally heard it yesterday. How will someone know to scroll to see what is below the fold? All right, I already said this. The fold is a lie. Say it to yourself. The fold is a lie. But have we met ourselves? We are obsessed with scrolling. We love to scroll. Every study I've ever seen shows this. My own thumbs show me this. We have apps on our phone that are designed to help us stop scrolling when we get caught in a scrolling loop. Scrolling on any devices are made to be scrolled on. Mouses? I'm not sure. Mouses are made to scroll. The key is you just have to keep people interested. People will scroll and scroll and keep scrolling if you're giving them the information they're looking for. So remember, this is not Field of Dreams. People don't come to your website just to scroll for fun, for their daily thumb exercise. But if they're coming to your website with a question and you're showing them that the information is there that they need, they'll look forever. And we love this. So if your content is well structured as well, that's an important part of it. They have to be able to see, yes, I will find the information here. But scrolling is not a bad thing. That's the message. And it's good to remember too that many people won't even hit your homepage. They won't come to your site through the homepage. So whatever is so-called above the fold on your homepage, which is not what most people get stressed about, is not even relevant to a large portion of your users. So again, if you have analytics, you can see what pages are entry points on your site, where people are coming from. Are they coming from search, social media, referrals from other sites? And if you don't have analytics, it's not a big deal. Just think to yourself, how often do you Google to find a website? Even websites you go to every day, you might Google, whatever. For me, it's like BC Bank login. Whoop, I don't go to bc.com. So just a lot of people aren't even looking at your homepage. They're going directly to the information they want. So instead of thinking about putting the most important content above the fold on your homepage, think more about in terms of putting information where its target audience can easily find it. Next, is this too many clicks? I also heard this just this week. So there's a common belief that any information you're looking for on a website should be no more than 3 clicks away from where you are. 3. I'm not sure how this came about, but there was a magic number of 3. Well, surprise, surprise, I'm here to tell you that there is not a magic number of clicks that is good or bad. It all depends on context. And that's because the motor skill to click, actually, let's not look at this giant menu yet. The motor skill to click, literally click, is not where the exertion comes in. The drag you feel when you can't find something on a site, or you feel like this feels like too many clicks, is from thinking too hard, having to think too hard. Clicking is very easy, thinking is very hard. Again, I'm not joking, that's real. So take this example. This is a mega menu, what we call a mega menu, with 10 primary items across the top. So imagine you go to a website, you mouse over the menu at the top, and this appears. There's 10 primary items across the top. Then there's 5 subsections to scan. And then there are so many links within those subsections. And by showing you all of these links at once, you have fewer clicks to get down to a deeper level. So you can sort of dive in wherever you're looking for. But it's a huge cognitive load to present all of this at once and have to scan, all of these different levels in this hierarchy. So I think looking at this mega menu, you might be able to see how giving you fewer well-labeled links at a time would result in technically more clicks, but it's a much easier mental exercise for your users. And there's data to back this up as well, of course. We're not making this up. Who do you think I am? Sorry, puff sleeves are making me saucy. In a study by Jacob Nielsen, who we love. What has happened? Wow, my hubris. I talked about my puff sleeves and then here we go. So in a study by Jacob Nielsen, users' ability to find products on an e-commerce site increased by 600%, which I said before, it doesn't even sound like a real number. This is a real study, increased by 600% after the design was changed. And in that design change, technically it changed so that the products were 4 clicks away from the homepage instead of 3. So they broke the 3-click rule, and a 600% increase in a user's ability to find content. So the best practice is, it doesn't matter really how many times we have to click, as long as each is an easy choice for us. So don't ask, is this too many clicks? We don't care about clicks. We can click forever. Ask, is this creating more cognitive load than it should? And you can test with real people to find out. The next one we see a lot in planning for new websites. People get ambitious, people get excited about the future of their website and what they're going to do with it. The idea that we need to post a lot of news and we will have a lot of news to post. People have really good intentions when we start these projects. Like I said, you get excited about the future, you start to dream big, and you want to tell everyone about the great things that are happening in your organization. We get that, we love that, we empathize with that. And so usually what we do when people say, we're going to have a lot of news to post, we design something that looks a little bit like this typically. So this is really common. It's usually appears on the home page. And so what you see here is 4 news posts that are probably pulled from the news listing on your site. There are multiple stories here on display, about 4 stories, very common for something we might design. For each story, there's a headline, there's a description, there's an article that we've linked to, of course. Maybe we'll have a category, a photo, the date that it was published. And this might look like not much work, but this is a pretty big content lift to commit to if you're designing a new site and you're not actually actively already pumping out news stories all the time. So, and because of the date that you can see here and the work that it takes to sort of stay on top of news News sections are often where content goes to rot. We've seen a lot of really sad news sections on sites. So this is me, of course. This is me, famously me, talking to my colleague, Lindsay, who's also a content strategist. We were looking at a new site and sort of evaluating this new client that we were working for. And we said, oh my gosh, how exciting. Look at all this news they've posted on their homepage. And then I clicked on one, and this was last year. I clicked on one, it was from January 2017. And so we see that old content, and to us, that's a sign that you had a well-intentioned commitment to news and it just fell through, and it happens all the time. So I have empathy for you as a content strategist, but to a site visitor, they see old content like this and they feel like they can't trust you for the information that they're looking for. And that's bad, that's very bad. I mean, we have heard a one-to-one connection from this in doing interviews with, say, prospective students or just audience groups that are needing websites, who say, if I go to a website and it seems like kind of a mess, it's outdated, it's not organized well, I tend to think that that organization doesn't care about being organized well, and they're not really on top of their game. So it can be a reflection of your organization. So don't do yourself a favor and don't commit to more than you can do. This is huge in content strategy. It's governance. You can always add more later in general, but committing to too much upfront is tough. So ask yourself, what does news mean to you and to your organization? What format might it take? What frequency? Be realistic. It's okay if you don't post news that often, but a 2017 to 2021 gap is a little too sad. And what specific business or audience goals does it accomplish? It has to be useful to someone. Is it something that your organization really needs to be expressing? It reaches some goals of yours to share your expertise or make people aware of something. And what do your audience members need from you? If you can create content that meets the needs of your audience and the information that you want to be putting out there, that's a golden ticket, baby. That's legal tender, baby, as my dad likes to say, apropos of nothing, just to mean things that he really likes. That's legal tender, baby. And most importantly, number 3, who is going to do this? Who is going to do this? This is a question that all of us are guilty of just sort of pushing to the side, and someone will come along and take care of this for us. Someone actually does have to write it and post it and usually edit it and review it. It takes work. So think about the process as well. So let your goals be your guide. This is completely my colleague, Lindsay Groth. I have to shout her out for these slides. This is her breakdown. I think it's so beautiful. We'll just go through it quickly. Unless you're a news outlet, and if you are here from the New York Times, please go ahead and interrupt because I want to know. But unless you're a news outlet, most sites are not primarily news sources. So take the pressure off of yourself for posting news and keeping it fresh, right? We have a theme here. Well, we don't really care about fresh. We care about accurate. And let your goals and your communication strategy be your guide for the functionality you need. So some examples here that may be useful to you. Maybe you occasionally share links to other news sources. So people are writing about your organization and posting it. We love that. That's really great for social media. It's an easy link share. You can write a little blurb about it, post it. People might retweet. It ups your visibility. Great. That matches the effort. You sometimes maybe need to post brief updates. Right now, of course, timely COVID guidelines, things that are changing, application deadlines, to keep your audiences informed. That might be an alert bar or sort of an announcement feature on your website instead of the heavier lift of a news article and committing to regular news. Maybe your communications team, that might just be you, I don't really know, you're writing in-depth articles every week. You really are creating written content every week that is, this of course is written for a higher ed audience, but maybe you're just a writer. You're creating content every week. You're committed to it and you have a process. That's news. That's legal tender, baby. That is news. You can have a news section. Feel free. We approve. We love it. We will retweet you on our Twitter. We won't, but we support you. And we also don't use Twitter. Or here's the one that we hear most often is, we really feel like we want to have a blog. It feels really important for us. We have these topics that we really want to write about. Who's going to do it? We're not sure. When are we going to do it? We're not sure. Where's it going to go? We're not sure. What is it for? Who is it for? We don't really know. That's nothing but a big red flag. Please wait. Do some more thinking. Do some more strategizing. Think about who this is for, why you're doing it, and you will help yourself. I promise. So Don't worry about posting a lot of news. Just think about ways to communicate timely content that you have and what format and frequency that might take. It might just be straight web content, text on a page. That's a great solution. We love that. That's the beauty of the web. You can just put text on a page. News sections that don't have content posted, I don't know, maybe at least within the last month or so can start to seem stale. So start with what you have and build from there. We should embed our social media feeds on our website. But should you? It is an actual good question. People do it. We build sites that allow for this. And it's not bad. There's no moral component to this. There are just pros and cons, as with everything in content, frankly. So if you are frequently posting on social media, then pulling that in gives your site updated content. Okay, it gives you the freshness that you might be looking for. And it's legitimate, because if you really are posting, this new stuff on social media, you're getting engagement, great. Then you'll have that updated look that you want. You'll have the updated content available for your audiences. That makes your job easier. It makes search engines happy. Social media may be where your personality and brand voice comes through a little bit clearer. And that's totally understandable. There could be a lot of reasons for that. I won't really go into it, but we've seen that a lot. And it might encourage new people to follow you on social media. Of course, that's a big pro. And there are also cons to it, of course. That adds extra code, extra scripts to your site that can really slow down the performance, which is not something that a lot of us think about, but it's huge. Even the difference of a few milliseconds can make a huge difference in whether people want to stay on your site, even hang around to see it load. So it can slow down your site. The more casual, ephemeral nature of social media posts may not really be the voice you want to project on your website. And here's the thing, when you put your social media feed, say, on your homepage, which is usually where they go, you really are literally encouraging people to scroll down in your site and then leave your site. You're like, hey, go check me out over here too. You might want that, you might not want that. So it can be a con that it takes people away from your site. So the idea usually comes up for a couple sort of red flag reasons in our experience. Number one, is your social media content just better than your web content because you're investing more resources there? A lot of times we see, sometimes organizations have interns. The interns are very comfortable with social media, so they spend a lot of resources on social media. So if it's just better than your web content and you need to sort of divert your resources back to your website, if you care about your website, that might be a red flag. And your social media platforms might just be easier to update than your CMS. We see this all the time too. Like, we all know how to, I don't know, we might not all know how to, but like, we could all figure out how to post on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, but we can all figure that out. And CMSs can be very tricky, clunky, out of date, et cetera. So it might just be easier to update, but one should not be a stand-in for the other. So if those are the reasons why embedding social media feeds are important to you on your site, then it might be time to step back and define your strategy for your communications, just to have a clear picture of what content belongs where. Who are you trying to reach on your website versus social media? Are those different? Do you have different audience groups for those? What is the strategy for each? And just make sure that it makes sense. Don't just be doing it willy-nilly, scattershot. Please ditch this belief. Our public website is also our intranet. This isn't so much a belief, it's just a reality that people pursue. So this means you're using one website to serve both external audiences and your internal audiences. So this is, if we built a Pixo website, we had, hey, you want to be a client? Are you interested in a project? Here. And for Pixonauts, click here. And this week, the staff agenda is this. And, all the internal resources live alongside the external resources. It happens. It happens all the time. Some things to consider. Your content is not for you. So just because it might be convenient, which it almost always is, this is why people do it, it's convenient to put internal facing content on your public site, does not mean that it is more helpful for anyone involved. The more content is on a site, the more people have to sort through for what they need. This means both audiences, internal and external. You're giving everyone a really big closet and saying you're welcome, when really what people need are smaller drawers. They just need to know what drawer to open. They don't need to be able to see everything that you have. It can be helpful sometimes in some very specific cases for external audiences to sort of get a peek at what internal audiences might see. in some cases, this can be potentially useful. But also content for internal audiences often takes a totally different tone, uses insider jargon, acronyms that can alienate external audiences. I did it immediately when I started to make up that fake example about the Pixo site, Pixonauts. That's what we call ourselves internally, but it might not mean anything to someone else. So do you really want to work on branding, having to brand all of your internal communications so that it has the same voice as your external? I wouldn't want to do that. And if you're storing things like employee policies, documents, agenda items, things like that on your public site, does it really make sense for that to be open to the public? Because the web is public by default. So I would argue that most times this does not make sense at all. So a separate intranet is almost always the better way to go, I would say, by default. And these are alternatives that our clients use as well. To create an intranet, or you create an internal collaboration space like Microsoft Teams, Google Sites, Box. A lot of our clients use Box. There are open source solutions. You can invest in a custom intranet if you have the resources for that. And a lot of these offer the benefits that an actual intranet needs, like file storage, authentication, or password protection. And best of all, they really allow you to keep those audiences separate and control the message for each. And understanding the needs of your internal audience, like I said, can be a whole project in and of itself. So don't combine if possible. However, we do know that this is not always an option for everyone. So if you have the stakeholders being like, we can't, the intranet is bad, we can't set up a box, we're busy, we're supposed to set up a box. If you must use your public website for intranet type content, try to reduce that cognitive load by labeling it very clearly and separating it from the primary content. So in this example, we can see how information for employees is far away from the content for public audiences. Literally, it's a different tab far away on this menu. And the footer can also be an inconspicuous place to put links for internal content if you must. So just remember that unless it requires a login, what is out there for internal audiences is out there for everyone. So just accept it. Your public website is public. Final belief. Do we have time? Are we good on time, Jenna Danielle? Sweet. The last belief. Sweet. Thank you so much. Then I'm going to slow down and really take my time. I'm just kidding. The last belief I would encourage you to ditch is this. Everybody's doing it, and we just need a really cool video. I love cool video. I love video. Videos are very cool. Videos are very effective. Videos can give people a good sense of space. You can do virtual tours. You can do interviews. They can tap into emotion, certainly better than written content that is, designed to be scanned. They're an effective tool for giving people instruction, for showing instead of telling, whatever that means for you. We love video. And video is very malleable in that it can be used a lot of places: websites, social media, ads, digital displays, events. And people do watch video online. Consumption has only grown over the last few years with streaming and social media, also pandemic. We're watching a lot of video online. However, I must tell you the hard truth that our favorite videos online, the ones that we are liking and subscribing to and sharing, are not necessarily the marketing videos that we're making for informational websites. These kinds of videos can be really expensive to produce. I'd say this is the number one red flag about them. They're expensive and they have a really short shelf life, especially if you feature people, which is one of the great values of video. You can get a sense of who a person is, but people leave. Organizations can no longer represent the program. Things change all the time. That's true for organizations and just true in life, isn't it? They have to be accessible with closed captioning to be accessible. That's another labor lift. And they're not always an equitable option if people don't have the data or the bandwidth to stream them. And they, just like so many other things on the web, can be ignored, not field of dreams. People will stop watching them. And the main reasons why is the videos don't provide the information that we want, just like anything else on the web. We need to get these sort of benchmarks and clues that we're in the right place to get the information we want, or we just get bored. Look at this poll on the right. I was bored, so I stopped watching. Extremely relatable. So if you're thinking about investing in video, it's not a bad idea. You just really need to ask yourself, as always, ask some questions. What specific audience need will this speak to? Make sure you're filling a need and it doesn't just sound fun. It's fun. Where can we use this video and for how long? Be realistic about it. And most importantly, who's going to do it? The perennial question of content strategy, evergreen. Who's going to do this? Who will create it? What will it cost? What is our budget for this? Does it make sense? Because making engaging video that people will watch on your website is a challenge. It can be worth it, but you just need to make sure that's worth it for you. So our advice, in case you haven't caught on to this already, it is, I like to say, a content strategist's job to give the extremely unsexy advice of focus on quality written content first. Make sure that that's in place, maybe before you start planning for more expensive multimedia solutions. Written content can be found by search engines easily. It's accessible to audiences pretty much universally, and it gives your visitors the information that they need. So I believe we have gone through all the myths I wanted to discuss. And so I just want to give a little pep talk at the end. This is one of my favorite things to say. It's just a website. It's just a website. And we are in a pandemic. So usually websites are not life or death. It's okay. It's okay to experiment. It's okay to try things. And I believe truly, I mean, the reason that I do this, I would not have stayed at Pixo for 7 years doing this kind of work if I didn't believe that it was good work, important work. And I stay here and I keep doing this and I care about this because I truly believe that websites can literally change lives and do every day because they help people make decisions about their lives. Sometimes those decisions are small, sometimes they're huge. Websites just provide people information. They make information equitable. They help people make decisions that affect their lives, their finances, their futures, their families. And at the same time, most websites are not life or death. So if you are here to talk about your website that is literally for the emergency room at a hospital and you're talking about a UI, that someone in an active crisis situation might be accessing, that's different. That is life or death. Most websites are not life or death. So websites are just a series of decisions and trade-offs. I keep saying it's about priority. There's pros and cons. There's no moral element to this. It's not good or bad to do anything on a website. It's just about learning and prioritizing. And every change takes some level of effort, and spending more effort in one place means you have to spend less effort in another. And so you're spinning your wheels and sort of wasting your own time and exhausting yourself unnecessarily, using energy on content and features that people don't really need. And so if you can make decisions based on what you know about your site visitors and your own goals, you really don't need to worry too much about what other people are doing. And finally, I'd like to point out again that a website is a living work. It's never done. This is great. This is beautiful. It means that you can avoid spinning your wheels by prioritizing. Do the high priority stuff, the things that seem most important to you and your audiences first, the timely stuff first. Let it live, let it breathe a little bit. You don't need to worry about keeping it fresh for the most part. Let it live. You can test it. We have ways of testing it. Maybe you could make a Calendly appointment with Danielle and I. We can talk about a little usability testing of content. You can tweak it, adjust it, and just repeat. It's okay. Take it incrementally. You're okay. That's my main message from you, or for you, from me. I'm okay. You're okay. So thank you very much for listening to my spiel about content strategy and myths. Thank you for letting me take you gently and firmly by the shoulders and give you a little shake. Don't worry about this stuff. There are more important things to worry about than slideshows and keeping your homepage fresh. So I believe giving it back to Jenna and Danielle.
This is great.
Thanks so much for listening, everybody.
Yeah, opening up to Q&A. So as I mentioned in the chat, if you want to put your question in the chat, which we might have a couple in there or a couple comments, or if you feel like brave enough, you want to unmute yourself, it's totally fine to just ask us a question. But I did want to say again that we are, opening up 2 appointments if you want to dig in deeper on your own too, because this stuff it's hard. Like we said in the beginning, writing's hard, and I agree. I have bridged that gap before myself of what do I put where and how do I do this. And if you just want somebody to help, talk through that, that's we're here for that too. And I have kind of talked to Lindsay about this, so I'm kind of putting it out there now officially, but she did say there's a part 2 to this. So we're hoping to do a content strategy 101 type of workshop in the future, near future, hoping to get that scheduled on the calendar soon. So digging in deeper to not just the myths, but how do you get to that next level yourself? So Jenna, was there a couple questions that we can go to, I think?
Yeah, Mel just put a question in the chat. She asked, you mentioned governance. Could you talk more about what that means, Lindsay?
Yes, Mel, I would love to talk about governance. Governance, I think of governance basically as maintenance. I'm kind of boiling it down to like the basics here. Just what is the plan for, we talked about news. It's so easy. I mean, I totally get it. I so empathize with this when we're planning a new website, like I said. And for instance, news is something that people love to commit to because they feel optimistic about it. And they're like, I mean, we all do this, right? To some extent, where it's like, tomorrow I will be a whole new person who can do XYZ. I'll be that girl or whatever. People always want to be that content girl. Rein it in, Lindsay, where you get ambitious. And so you want to make plans for the kinds of things that you'll post in the future. People do this all the time in different ways, but making sure that that commitment is actually realistic for your needs, for your time, for your, for the staffing that you have, the time, the talents, the abilities that people have. It just needs to be realistic for the future. So when I talk about governance, I basically mean content maintenance, and keep the ability to keep things accurate and timely on your site or your digital presence. Just having a plan for that and having a process in place. I also want to say, I sort of alluded to this earlier, but it's also usually more than it appears for sites, especially for organizations. If you're thinking about your own personal site, then good on you. You're probably a staff of one, and knowing your own limitations can be a little bit easier, actually. And when you're working with a group, there's usually hidden labor in something like posting web content. There is hidden labor because it's like, well, I write it and then I post it. But for the most part, a lot of organizations, you want to make sure it's accurate. So someone needs to read it if it's not your subject, the subject that you know the most about. Do you have a style guide? Is someone going to need to review it for voice? Just proofreading, and then do you actually know how to post it? So there can be a lot of hidden steps for content governance. So making sure you uncover what those are and just have a plan. Just have a plan.
We didn't have any other questions in the chat, but I wanted to shout out a really great point that Christine made, that videos are so hard to produce. They get old and outdated quickly. Maybe you can talk about videos a little bit, Lindsay.
Yeah, videos. It's just like, first of all, Christine, thank you. And I'm so glad to see you here. Yeah, videos are rough. I mean, videos are great and they're so rough. It's such a double-edged sword. And we deal with this all the time, where video can be really engaging. We just designed a homepage this week that has a big, beautiful video at the top. And the reason we chose to put that video at the top is it's sort of cut and edited in a way that is not beholden to any certain program. It's not beholden to any certain person. So the things I mentioned earlier, it happens all the time. I mean, it happens at Pixo where we create these elements that have something to do with media or imagery. And then things change so quickly that within a few weeks, it's like, well, now that's outdated. The staff has changed, or, we changed that program, and it can be the smallest thing. And I'm specifically thinking about videos, for instance, for higher ed or colleges or units where they say, well, we're really proud of our such and such organization. And then 2 months down the road, they rename that organization. Okay, now what? Now that name is just stuck in there. It's just so easy for things to fall out of date on a video. And yeah, they're expensive to produce. So I think I'm not a media producer. If you were thinking about creating a video, I would not be the person that you should come to first for advice on that. I've just seen this happen a lot with our clients where they spend a lot of effort, time, money on videos, usually hiring outside agencies to come in and produce them. They're gorgeous, they're beautiful, and they just don't have that long of a shelf life. So I'm sure there are ways to plan for it, to make it I'll give it a longer shelf life. And
yeah, I saw the pitfall of this in one of my last roles, and it was like, oh, we're going to do this promotional video and talk about our people. It was like to help hire other people, and then within 30 days, like those people may or may not work there anymore that were the highlighted people, like talking about how great it was, and it's like, oh geez, like, well, that failed, and we spent all this money doing it, and it was very short-lived. So I've definitely seen that.
Totally. Yep.
Shelby has a question, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was curious on what advice you have related to like information on your website for competitors. Like how much information, is there information that's like too much information that you don't want to like let out all your secrets, but you think your clients should be aware of it? Anything on that?
Yeah, this has come up. Okay, I'm trying to think. This came up for me years ago where there was a major stakeholder involved in a website project, like a decision maker. And this was like his main concern was, let's see, I don't want to go too deep in the weeds on this, but now that I'm trying to remember what it was, because I remember being like, what? He didn't want to put the names of staff members. This was specific, so this is maybe not what you're talking about, Shelby, but he didn't want to put the names of his staff members on the site because he was afraid that poachers might start reaching out to them. And I was like, that's very interesting, because you also need audience members to be able to find. So I guess the broadest answer to your question, without knowing a lot of details, is it all really boils down to knowing the audience's needs. So who are, the competitors, boo hiss, we don't like them, we don't want them to come to the site. So there might be something there, like making a list of what you absolutely, it would be a disaster if our competitors found a certain type of information. I guess that also ties into the internet part. It's like, then we don't put that. If it would be a disaster, we don't put that on the site, because that would be public and they can find it if you're worried about that. And then also the flip side of that is being really intentional, or as intentional as you can, about who your website is for and what they need to hear. And does that sort of outweigh any sort of risk of a competitor finding something? And what was I? There also might be some, if you're not comfortable putting some type of information on the website because it would be public and you're like, I'm not really sure I want competitors to see this, it might be, I would say the default is don't put it on the website if you're worried. However, if there's a middle ground to play in, there might also be, the middle ground might be, we also have more information about XYZ available, email us, or reach out to us for it, and you can then deal with people directly and give them that type of information. Yeah, that's, I know, a pretty general answer, but I think, if audiences need information, I would say that's number one priority, barring any kind of legal or financial trouble you might be able to get yourself into with competitors, of course.
We've got a few minutes left here and the questions are rolling in. Oh, I'm sorry, Shelby, I didn't mean to cut you off if you had.
Oh, no, I just said thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Shelby.
Shelby says thank you. I just wanted to pass that along.
You're
okay,
welcome.
So Lori in the chat said she's just starting to build the blog section of her website. Is there a recommended amount of time to keep blog posts available on the website? The topics that she will write are related to business, cash planning, tax, retirement planning, accounting systems, where things change frequently.
Things change frequently. Okay, my first instinct is something we just did on the Pixo blog, don't tell anyone, where we added a feature, pixotech.com, /blog, we added a feature. Okay, we had a similar concern about what if we need to later, I don't know, Mal, you might be able to speak to this too, as a stakeholder in this project, where we didn't want things to look outdated. We wanted to be able to have a long shelf life for posts, basically, and things do change. So we added a feature that shows when the post was originally posted. So it literally might say, January 2015, we posted this, and then when it was last updated as another feature. I'm realizing as I'm saying this is like, we built our blog. So we had the option to do that. And at the same time, I'm sure there are built-in blog features for something like this. And of course, if you're working with developers, our developers did it. So I would definitely ask for a feature like that to see if that's possible. You could also maybe add that in manually if it's not too much of a lift for you. But Mel, did you want to speak at all to the concerns that we were?
Yeah, in our case, in many cases, I think it's a credibility issue. So you posts that can have a long life, even if they start to get a little long in the tooth. It's helpful to have them up there for SEO to say we care about this topic, but we're also being transparent about this is a while ago. In your case, and part of that I think is like how prominently do we show the date? And in our case, we decided to actually de-emphasize the date. So even though those two dates do exist, they're at the bottom of post. In your case, it might be you want to have that date, in the little mini blurb with the headline, because the timeliness of that information is really important. So thinking about, it shouldn't be an automatic, like I'm going to show the date and the time too. Sometimes like a lot of the software just like kind of pushes you in one direction by default, but thinking through what's our strategy on date, how timely is it, and is date something that helps with credibility, and how much? So how do I push that forward? What would you say to this question though, Lindsay, in terms of like, for this subject matter, should like outdated information live on? Should it be updated? Should it be taken off?
I'm kind of torn, because I think it sounds like a lot of, okay, well, no, you can plan for this. Here's the answer. You can plan for this. When you write a post, I would say that's part of it. That part of it is when you write a post or plan for a post, to just think ahead, and think, okay, is this part of, a tax cycle? I don't know much about taxes other than I pay them every year, government. But like you're saying, there are cycles, things are relevant and then they're not. So you might make a note to yourself, put it on your calendar and say, maybe archive something or unpublish something for a while and then update it and repost it again when it becomes relevant. Because then you're getting into information where you're getting into a situation where you could potentially be implying some misinformation if it's out of date or it's not relevant due to the time of year. So that's content governance as well, just making a simple plan. And I keep trying to emphasize this. I hope it's coming across. It might not be, that all of this is so scalable. Even just making a note, like I said, it could be as simple as just think about it when you're writing a post, put something on your calendar that will pop up in 3 months that says, delete that post. Or you can spend a week strategizing and planning and making charts and everything. It's like, you can start anywhere. So just thinking about it is a great first step. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. That sounds really interesting. I love learning about all these fields. Tax. I'm sure that is a really fascinating content problem.
You're doing great, Lindsay. My dad's an accountant, so it's not, I assure you. I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
I'm just kidding, Lori. Yeah.
From the daughter.
There is a quick follow-up to that question that Christine had in the chat. Any tips for tagging that type of content?
Tagging is so hard. Because it's often like completely custom. So, no. No. Next. It's really hard. Tagging really is, I think, honestly, too complicated to begin to get into here, because you create it from scratch every time for the most part. So I guess more information about the question might be helpful too, Christine. Like, what do you mean, as Justin Bieber once sang to us?
I just found it interesting that, Lori, when you posted your comment, that you included kind of some of the areas that topics that you were thinking about writing for. And like those topics definitely make sense to me. I'm just curious. I guess I was just curious to know if, if you had any tips around like, are these the right topics, or are there like, is there some way you can find that out?
Totally.
Just to help
Yeah,
Lori out
definitely.
as she's like thinking about building that out.
Yeah. Okay. That helps a lot. Yes. I love the topics that you listed, Lori. So I hate to be a broken record, but also I don't hate to, because it comes back to the basics where it really depends on what your audiences are looking for. So I think if you have analytics installed on the site and you can see the search terms that are leading people to your site, or even just thinking about, the calls you get or the emails, the questions you get from clients or customers, what are the phrases that they use? What are, do people call and say, I feel like I'm behind on retirement planning? What are the common phrases that, and to really think deeply, well, it doesn't have to be that deep. Think quickly and swiftly about, make sure you're not using the terms that you use internally. If you're Jenna's dad and you're an accountant, I'm sure you talk about taxes in a much different way than I, a fool, talk about taxes. I'm just a person trying to get along and not be arrested. So just making sure that, again, easier said than done, but the goal is use the phrases and the words that your audiences are looking for and using themselves. And that's true for web content in general. I think it's true for tagging, etc. Great.
I will say too, like as a person that gets the first call a lot of like, hey, I heard about Pixo, I Googled you. I'll be like, oh, what did you Google? Because I'm super interested. Like, how did you find us by just putting something in the internet? And it's just great to know, like, what do people think about us versus what do we say about us? And is that connecting? So I think that's a great tip. Just ask.
Absolutely. Yep. We can become very blind to the ways, the phrases people use
Mhm.
versus our own. We've learned that a lot.
Well, we are at the 11 o'clock hour. I know we probably have a few more questions, but we'd love to use that Calendly link and spend that time with you there. So please come chat with Lindsay and I. We'd love to hear more from you. And
Yeah.
if you're interested in Content Strategy 101, we will put you on our list to get information about that webinar coming up soon.
Yes,
It was
please
great
sign
to
up.
see everybody. And the puff sleeves were a great addition, Lindsay. Good job.
Thank you. I feel the power that they brought me.
Thank you, everybody. We will see you hopefully on our next webinar, and we'll be sending out information soon.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.